everybody, welcome to Stuff Sketched with Gregg Schigiel. I am Gregg Schigiel, and on this episode, I am drawing a super team from a comic book series I've been reading recently. This year, 2019, I've been reading minimum one comic a day, trying to get through my stack of comics. And among those comics I'm reading are some digital ones, some of them older, and this series I'm reading is a comic series that somehow I overlooked for many years, despite being a fan of so much about this comic. It was pointed out to me by a friend of mine that he was surprised that this was not a comic I read. So growing up, I was a huge Batman fan, and I was a huge fan of the comic book artist Alan Davis. Still am. And when I was first starting to read comics, I would specifically buy comics that had three names on them in the credits. It would say Barr, Davis, and Neary. And it was a run of detective comics with Batman that is still to this day one of my favorite runs on that series. And as it happens, Mike Barr, in hindsight, with the hindsight of looking back, was a terrific Batman writer, and I enjoyed all the Batman stuff he had written that I had read as a younger person. And Alan Davis, before he worked on Detective Comics, worked on a different book with Mike Barr, and that book was Batman and the Outsiders. So what I am drawing is a group shot of Batman and the Outsiders. This video is in two parts. So part one is going to be the layouts, which you've seen me do now, and the pencils, which you're seeing me start now. And then part two will be inking and coloring. And I'll keep talking about something related to Batman and the Outsiders. But Batman and the Outsiders was a series that was from the mid-'80s. Batman left the Justice League and formed his own team of superheroes. The character I'm penciling right now is Metamorpho. Then this guy who I'm drawing right now is Black Lightning. The other members of the team were Katana, Halo, and Geo-force. Now, people who know Batman and the Outsiders will say, hey, wait a minute. You're missing somebody. Where's Looker? Looker was part of the Outsiders, and that is true. But as I am reading the series now, I am only just at the issues where Looker starts to appear. So she has not appeared in costume yet in the run. So I am drawing the Batman and the Outsiders as of the last issue of Batman and the Outsiders that I personally have read. So you'll see Geo-force is going to be wearing his second costume in that series, not the original red and tan, which, as I realize as I'm saying this is a series that I can only imagine a fraction of people watching this have ever read or known about, and I'm getting really detailed into some of the ephemera. Is that the right word? Anyway, I'm also drawing this one in a pretty cartoony style. I've been thinking about drawing stuff just for fun, which in some ways this channel and these videos are, and I like drawing things cartoony. So you'll see in this particular piece, I'm pushing things in a lot of different ways. So Katana, who's the figure on the far right, they're all pretty cartoony, but Katana is especially cartoony. So is Black Lightning, for that matter. So anyway, this series is pretty terrific. Batman left the Justice League. He forms this new team of, I don't know if they're oddball heroes, but they're certainly not your standard fare. Geo-force is the prince of a sovereign nation. He has, it's hard to tell if I think his powers are gravity based. Like, he can affect gravity, but he also has these force blasts that he can fly with, and he's super strong. I must say, his powers are slightly ill-defined. Halo is this girl with these glowing auras, and each aura the different colored auras can have different effects on people. Stasis, shielding, that kind of a thing. Katana has a katana sword, and she's a martial arts master. And the sword can contain souls. Black Lightning, now star of a TV show, can hurl lightning bolts. And Metamorpho, outside of Batman, another favorite character of mine, and he is the Element Man. He is composed of and can become any element on the periodic table. He was created by Bob Haney and Ramona Fradon, and he's great. He's this I guess, like mercenary adventurer named Rex Mason who gets caught in an Egyptian pyramid and is affected by this orb, the Orb of Ra, and it gives him these crazy powers and makes him look like a freak. He's got a girlfriend, Sapphire Stag, who loves him anyway, but he has this whole thing where he's like, how can you love me? I'm disgusting, even though she does love him no matter what he looks like. And extra bonus, he puts on a disguise to make himself look normal. So all of his hemming and hawing about being monstrous it's bananas. And then Sapphire's got her dad, who's like a rich jerk, and he's got a lackey, I guess, for lack of a better word, who's a Cro-Magnon man, who's also in love with Sapphire, Rex's girlfriend. It's great. And what's extra great is that was the stuff that was set up in the 60s when Metamorpho first appeared on the scene. In the 80s, in Batman the Outsiders, that was all still going on. The same dynamic was still in play. And more recently, in the book The Terrifics, at least as of the last issues I read, that mechanic is still going on. Although I read an issue where the Cro-Magnon character, Java, has been given a slightly different status quo. No spoilers. I'll let you read it on your own time. But anyway, I've been reading this book, and the first run of the issues was by Mike Barr and Jim Aparo, who are credited as the creators of Batman the Outsiders. Jim Aparo, a legendary, longtime Batman artist, drew some classic Batman stories for sure. And then, at a certain point in the series, Alan Davis joins. And it's clearly Alan Davis's earliest, or very early work at DC Comics. But the bones are there, and it's great to read it. And I can't believe I neglected it for so long. When I was a kid, when the comic was coming out, my older brother was buying it, so we had the issues. I don't know why I wasn't reading it. It doesn't make any sense. But I didn't. So I'm reading them now, and I'm enjoying them enough that for this stuff sketched, and the next one, because again, it's a two-parter, we're getting Batman the Outsiders. Batman the Outsiders I think the Outsiders are now part of what was the most recent season of Young Justice on the DC app. I have not watched it. There's a new Batman the Outsiders comic, but as far as I know, I think Black Lightning and Katana are in it, but I don't think Geo-Force, Halo, Metamorpho is definitely not in it because he's in the Terrifics. Anyway, there you go. Just addressing the drawing, you might be able to see now as it's coming together in pencils more clearly that there's a more cartooniness to it than perhaps in my past superhero drawings. Here I'm doing some digital hokey pokey, moving that Metamorpho arm a little out of the way rather than redrawing it because I was happy with the fist, so I didn't want to redraw it. It's easier to move things around to make room for Halo's arm to avoid any harsh tangents or things like that. I mean, it's still a little close, but it'll all work. The other thing I really love about reading these old Batman and the Outsiders comics, or old comics in general, is they have a certain language. There's a certain language to the comics I grew up in that is no longer in style, let's say. And that is what I would describe as very comic booky writing. Really broad in terms of like the characters really feel their emotions in very strong but sort of basic ways. So the aforementioned Metamorpho, like he will express whether verbally to his girlfriend Sapphire Stag or just in a thought balloon, how disgusted he is with his appearance, and it's all right there for you to read. There's subtlety in the storytelling and that kind of a thing, but it's clearly written for a very wide audience, a young audience, a broad audience, in a way that a lot of times comics sometimes don't feel in this modern era. Not that one is better than the other, but I certainly have certain nostalgic feelings towards this older style. And it's weird to say older style because it just means I'm old. But they're fun. I mean, a lot of comics of that era are a lot of fun. A lot of those comics are the things that the people who are writing comics now grew up reading. So there's clearly something that locked in. I think a lot of it is we read that stuff, and as much as we can look back on it and see there's a certain elegant simplicity to it, as we read it, we weren't seeing it that way. We were taking the very broad things and extrapolating them as very real and intense, or whatever the case may be. I think that made sense. I don't write these things down before I start talking. I just sort of start talking and rewatch the video of me drawing at high speed. These drawings are done, or you're seeing them, obviously sped up. I think they're sped up at 5 times speed. I can't remember. It'll be in the show notes, the exact rate of speed at which this is sped up. As I mentioned, this is part 1 of 2, so you're seeing me do the pencils. Batman will be the last thing I pencil. Is it saving the best for last, or is Metamorpho the best because he's way up in the foreground? Who knows? Well, you would know. Here I'm doing a little more digital finagling, moving Katana around. She was a little too small, and she is not a child. She is, I think, the second oldest person on the team. I think it's Batman. Well, I don't know. She and Black Lightning and Metamorpho are clearly older. Geo-force and Halo are like teenagers because they go to school. And then here comes Batman, a character I've drawn many, many times. Although in this instance, his head was giving me trouble for whatever reason. Strange. I think it was I was trying not to draw it in the animated style, so I kept going back. And I didn't want to give him the big chin like I gave Geo-force to sort of vary up the head shapes and stuff. But yeah, it'll be continued in part 2, so stick around for that. That's about all the stuff I have left to say. I'll see you next time.